The following is a Michigan Sesquicentennial Year presentation.
Here on Big Buck Night, we see all kinds of bucks, and we're going to start off with an unusual rack, a perfect 4-point. One antler is growing down in front of its eye. The other perfectly formed antler is growing up where it should be. The taxidermist who mounted it, Brad Bruce from Tecumseh. We're going to talk to the fellow who got this rack here. An interesting story behind it. A lot more stories coming up, too. Stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, Big Buck Night, right here on Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you of the beauty in this state of Michigan.
This lower antler has velvet on it, was partially rubbed off by the deer. Of course, he was able to clean off this upper antler. Mm-hmm. An unusual configuration, huh, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell you, you've seen some odd things come in your taxidermy shop, and you're the only person who has seen the skull under here to tell us what's underneath there. But Gary Langan, who got this buck, used a call. How many hunters do you know have called in a buck?
Not many at all, if
Not
any.
many. This is an interesting story. Let's go to Gary Langan and hear the story behind this 4-point.
Well, what was the story behind this buck? Had you seen this before you got it?
No, I haven't. I was sitting there and I was using a grunt collar. And I wasn't even sitting 20 minutes and I probably blew it 3 times. And if deers had toes, this deer would have been on his toes. He came over just looking for something. And
now, you know, that would sound like these grunt collars work like a snap. But how many times have you been hunting this year?
We just got this grunt collar the past week.
No kidding.
My kids were playing with it outside when the night before that, a 4-point come up and a spike come up. And then,
to the call?
Yeah, to the call on the field. And we figured it was to the call because my kids were playing with it. And then the next night, that's when I decided to take it out. And I wasn't even sitting a half hour.
That's amazing.
This buck come over looking for someone.
This buck that is a 4-point, but I have never seen a deformation just like that. It looks like if this deer had maybe another year, it could possibly injure itself or... But this antler is slightly loose. Well, we'll find out when we get it to the taxidermist what the story is underneath there.
Brad Bruce, taxidermist from Tecumseh, president of the Michigan Taxidermist Association, the only man who has seen the skull of this deer. Was it hit by a car? Was it bashed down there?
No, I wish I had a really, really intriguing story, Fred, but what we found when we skinned the deer was just really damage on the pedestal, a little bony outcropping from the skull plate that's located just underneath the burr here, was just flattened, and that's it. Other than that, the skull was in very normal.
It didn't look like he'd been hit by a car, huh?
No, not in our opinion at all.
Well,
No,
I guess you know...
Perhaps some type of injury, but I don't think car-related.
That's amazing, because both antlers, actually, I think if that was propped back there, would be a normal-looking buck.
Oh, for sure.
Interesting. Well, this buck is going to be on display up at our museum at Houghton Lake this weekend. Brad Bruce, the taxidermist. Well, we thought we'd really find something there.
Well, I kind of thought we would too, but
you know,
it wasn't there.
With the car deer kills around the state, we have a story right now. Adeline Werp, who was up in Alcona County, and she had an encounter with a 10-point that she won't forget.
Do you see bucks in the woods a lot, Adeline?
No.
You don't?
I never see them.
Except on the highway.
Right.
Well, what was this, 2 days before opening day, 3 days?
It was Thursday, about 10 minutes to 7. I was on my way to camp. I was going down 65 just before I come to Whittemore, and I was really frightened. I was following this car, and I was about 4 car lengths behind them. I was watching the road because son Joe had said to me, "Mom, be careful. Watch for the deer." I didn't expect to see anything come out from the side of the road. And all of a sudden, I see this head with 2 big horns. How many points, I have no idea. And I screamed, oh my God, and I heard the crash. I swerved to the left, and that's what happened.
That's what happened. How much damage is this, do you know?
I have no idea, really, but
$1,000
I'm sure.
or so? Somebody
Looks like
said
that's where the horn hit it.
right here, the antler
Yes,
whacked it right there. So it hit it on the front?
yes.
Now, how did you get all this damage down the side?
Well, I think when I went to the state police and turned in the report, the officer thought that when I hit the deer here, the rear end of it.
Oh, swung around.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big deer.
Yes, and he was sure that I killed it.
So, but you don't know what happened
Nope,
to it?
I wasn't going to stop. Not at night, not when it was dark.
Mm-hmm.
There was a car that was following me, maybe about a quarter of a mile back of me, and their brights went on, but then they didn't stop either. They just kept right on going. So I'm sure they saw what happened, but
Scared you?
frightened me. All I could see for a couple of nights was this head with horns.
Coming at your car.
Right. I don't want to ever go through that again.
Adeline Werp was lucky. Last year, 5 people were killed when their cars hit deer on Michigan highways. 5 of nearly 33,000 car deer accidents reported in 1986. The more deer hunters harvest, the less car deer accidents are likely to happen in the coming year. But some hunters, like Doug Little of Royal Oak, can't seem to find a buck in the woods despite years and years of hunting.
Early 70s.
Yeah.
But now, what year did you get your buck?
I think it was in 1948.
Now, why is it since 1948 and 1987?
I was out this morning. I don't know. This morning I seen 6 does. Morning, no horns. I just can't put a horn on them.
You must have seen bucks, though.
No, I've never seen a buck. The only buck I ever seen is the one I got.
In 1948?
And that was in 1948, the only buck I've ever got.
That's an incredible streak.
Incredible
That's
story.
it's an incredible,
Yeah,
almost a
I know.
Guinness story.
I know.
How many?
I see deer every year. I have a place up here just, I'm just out of Meredith around Elbow Lake in there. And we were out this morning. We'll go out, tomorrow morning because I'm up for a week and then I'm going up to Traverse City to try it around there because my son-in-law lives up there. Maybe I'll have some luck up there.
No kidding.
But, yeah.
Now, why in the world would you hunt for 39 years
don't know.
and not just give up and
I
say,
know, and I go every year. Oh, it's the fun. The woods, and I just love it. And get away from the city, the fresh air, and you just can't beat it.
It sounds to me like if you broke your streak and got a buck this year,
Well, maybe
Your
it's not
reputation-
over with yet.
your reputation would be shot.
I know it's not over with yet. We may get them. Oh, we've had, 4 or 5 out of our area up there. But it wasn't me. My son's got one. My brother used to get them. And his father-in-law up there used to get them. He was about 60. No, he was 74 last time he come up. And he got one. Yeah. That was
imagine-
right behind the cabin.
I imagine there were a few years in there where you took a lot of joking. 5 years without
Still taking a lot of jokes.
Still taking a lot?
Yeah, still taking a lot of
I
jokes.
thought maybe you'd be past that.
Yeah. No. I'll get one yet.
Have you been hunting the same area since 1940?
No. Right now, the area I've been hunting, I'd say for the last 15 years. And that's this area here. And then look up here.
I know,
Something I'm not doing right. Yeah.
but it doesn't seem to worry you too much.
Oh, no, I love it. I look for it. That's my week every year. Get up with the guy.
Well, that's
Yeah.
outstanding.
Yeah.
Hey,
No, we love it.
the Deer Hunter's Great Attitude of the Year Award.
Oh, yeah.
Goes
Just
to-
hang in there.
Hang in there. Goes to who? Were you?
Doug Little.
Doug Little?
Yeah, out of Royal Oak.
Hey,
Right.
a big man in the hunter's book, I'll tell you.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks a lot.
What?
Last year, Lloyd Branham from Ypsilanti made the trophy book with his 10-point rack, a buck he took with a bow in Jackson County at the end of October. Antlers grow large and fast in southern Michigan. It wouldn't surprise me if this was a 1.5-year-old farm country buck. Across the bridge, we don't get as many entries in our Big Buck Awards, but we do get some of the biggest. Gary Ziedzik from Canton hunted Mackinac County and took this 10-point, another nicely symmetrical rack. Can you believe it's not big enough to make Big Buck Night? It is plenty big enough, though, for our trophy book. Muzzleloaders have a short season coming up. Bow hunters are in business right now. Gale's Bait and Tackle at Quantico has a bow hunters are waiting for the corn to come down. Nobody's fishing in the southeast, according to Real Hunting Outlet, but BJ Sporting Goods, St. Joe area says steelheading is great, 6 to 7 per boat. Parsley says they're getting limits of walleye around Newego. Captain Emil Dean says the steelheading has slowed down on the Manistee, but they're getting some nice steelhead. Kind of quiet around Houghton Lake, kind of quiet around Oscoda. A few steelhead being taken. Quiet throughout the North Country and Northern Lower. Bayshore Resort, though, says 8 to 12-inch perch. They're waiting for ice in Bay to knock. Root Cellar says they have 5 inches of snow on the ground in the western UP, getting a few walleye, and Dick's Favorite Sports says they're catching some 10 to 15-pound northerns. The ice is not safe. There is ice up there, though. Now for a deer season report, let's go to Bob Garner.
As expected, the preliminary deer kill figures are up in virtually all areas of the state. The Upper Peninsula bucktake was up 21% to 33,500. In the northern lower, the bucktake was down just a hair as expected for a total of 83,000. However, with a few more antlerless deer taken than last year, the northern lower was up almost 9%. 57,000 bucks and 28,000 antlerless deer combined to make Region 3, the southern lower, set a record of 85,000 deer taken. Now that's up almost 16,500 deer over 1986. The total number of bucks taken statewide was 173,500. Antlerless totals were 72,500 for a grand total of 246,000 deer. That's a little over 33,000 more deer than were taken in 1986. And the DNR is asking anyone with information on the moose that was killed in eastern Baraga County to call the RAP hotline. The bull that was shot was a year-and-a-half-old 700-pound native Michigan bull that could have been shot just prior to the deer season. $4,000 so far has been offered as a reward. In the past week, I found out some disturbing things about the Michigan Humane Society, and I mean really disturbing since I'm a hunter. The fact is, the Michigan Humane Society has emerged as the biggest anti-hunting organization in the state, and they're picking up momentum. No longer does the society devote its full attention to spaying and neutering dogs and cats. It's expanded its scope to include court battles and now legislative ploys to try and curtail and ultimately end hunting. One of their plans, detailed in a letter I saw last week, is to develop and promote the chemical sterilization of elk, moose, and deer. Now, they're buying large tracts of land to try and get this started as a replacement for hunting. If you're a hunter and you've been asked to donate to a local humane society, you ought to check out how they spend their money. If they're affiliated with the Michigan Humane Society, they're likely to spend your money to try and end your opening days for good.
We got a letter from Andy Dotson from Northville who asks, if a buck and a doe were standing side by side and I fired one shot from my .30-06, which went through the buck and the doe, killing both, would I legally be able to keep both deer? Well, if you don't have 2 deer tags, you can't legally possess 2 deer no matter what the circumstances are. Herb Burns, the DNR law chief, says you should leave the second deer where it is and call a conservation officer. What could get you in trouble is doing anything that would look like you were trying to possess the deer. That's field dressing, dragging it to your truck, and so on. For your protection, leave the deer where it is and give the conservation officer the best evidence that the double shooting was a mistake and not intentional. Otherwise, you could be open for a ticket.
Deer antlers are true bone composed of calcium and phosphorus. What is the major difference that causes antlers to be stronger than skeletal bones in deer? Well, unlike most skeletal bones in mammals, antler bones are solid and do not have a soft core of marrow.
Take my advice, don't
Vic
go.
Werp from Bloomfield Hills owns the Dry Hole Club in Alcona County, where I spent opening morning this season. Vic's a lifelong hunter and fisherman. He's 71 years old, and there aren't too many things that slow him down outdoors.
Really, Vic? Now, do you have any hearing problems? Are those hearing aids you have?
Oh, yes. About 15 years ago, I fired a rifle in an enclosed blind. It wasn't really all that enclosed, but I couldn't hear for 2 days, and then my hearing came back, and then gradually I had a little loss every year. And now with the microphones, I can turn everybody off or on at my pleasure.
Can you hear as well as you used to with the hearing aids? I mean, how effective are they?
Oh, yes. The only trouble is in a big crowd, it's pretty hard to separate the voices.
Mm-hmm.
But it's no great problem, actually.
So firing a rifle from a rifle shot, that accelerated the hearing loss?
That's what the doctor said, yes.
Had you, up to that point, had you always worn ear muffs or ear protection when you sighted in your rifle or shot?
Sometime I just forget.
Mm-hmm. Do you now? Or do you just turn your hearing aid off?
Just turn the hearing aid off, right.
He makes the best of it, but Vic Werp's rifle shot 15 years ago can remind all of us to wear earplugs or muffs while shooting. Protecting our ears is the best way to ensure that we'll be able to enjoy the sounds of the outdoors forever. Another festive recipe for the holiday season, piping hot venison dip that Bonnie Zeidler entered in our wild game cooking contest last March was a winner.
Oh, she won, and
A
I can
big
see
winner.
why.
The ingredients we have, cheddar cheese, sour cream.
You got enchilada sauce, taco sauce, refried beans, everything that goes into a Mexican dish. That's great for sitting around TV. You got your, like you say, taco mix. Now that's your dry taco mix. You can spread your refried beans in the bottom of your dish. And those will kind of make a layer on the bottom. And then you're going to fry your venison burger, and you want it cooked completely. And then you're going to mix all your other sauces and your taco mix and everything all together right
With
in the
that
meat.
burger.
That's right. And then put on the cheese, and it calls for 1.5 cups of cheese and several different kinds. And that's going to cook just until the cheese is bubbly. And then you're going to put sour cream on the top of it.
So that's basically already cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the sour cream, and here we have the finished dish that Bob Garner has taken about 1/8 of here.
Well, I plan to get another 3/4 of it, too. What's
Now,
left?
how do you rank this, Bob? This is kind of hot. This has some...
Spicy, not really hot, just spicy.
Yeah, that's exactly the tenor of this thing. I think you could heat it up if you wanted to with some jalapenos and things like that, but it is terribly spicy. And from what you tell me, Fred, the Mexican food is like this for the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
And it is. It's good and festive and spicy.
Great for sitting around watching TV, a baseball game, football game this time of year.
Could you freeze this?
Oh, absolutely. You
could?
wouldn't want
really?
to put the sour cream on it. Yes, but
But you
yeah,
could freeze it.
Neat.
definitely.
And definitely you can taste the venison. It does taste
Oh.
like a little hint of venison burger right in there. But a great treat. Bonnie Zeidler did a great job. Something that's easy to make. You could make a great recipe for the holiday season. See if you folks can't get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week. It's here. Big Buck Night 1987, an exciting night for the 28 hunters who were lucky enough to get deer with massive antlers, unusual antlers. They're the ones you're going to be seeing this evening. It's also an exciting night for those of us who are going to share in their stories. Big antlers, well, what are they all about? Well, I don't know. We've established a minimum of 10 points for our Stroh's Hunting Award qualifications. Count the antler points. If you have 10 on a buck that you got, you'll get a Stroh's Hunting Award. Or you can qualify by an outside spread in inches added to the number of points. If that's 28, so if you have an 8-point that has a 20-inch spread, you'll qualify. You'll get a patch, a certificate, a membership in the Outdoors Club, which gets you the Outdoor Digest magazine, and you'll be invited to the banquet. You'll also be listed in our trophy book, which is at the back of our cookbook. Why do we put the trophy book at the back? Well, I tell you, deer season is also exciting for a lot of families and friends of hunters because they can share in the great recipes. That's what deer hunting is all about to most of us. We enjoy the recipes, but we also, something about these big racks really fascinates us. What's the blockbuster of all times? Craig Calderon got it last year, the state record with a bow. Already, the corn country takes it. A southern Michigan buck right here you're seeing first on Michigan Outdoors that is a record book buck. Craig Calderon from Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
This is going to be the new state record. Pretty sure. He scores 192.5. The old gun record is 186 and 1/8, and the bow and arrow record is 181.
Wow. This is the unfortunate, well, not unfortunate, what am I talking about? The deductions that Pope and Young have in the scoring system are for lack of symmetry, and this tine right here does not have a match on this side of the antler, which makes it an uneven number of points here. So that amount is deducted from your score.
Yeah, that cost me actually 10 inches because you don't add this side and you subtract it. So it's about a 10-inch difference. So if you happen to have this on this side and you didn't have this little sticker point right here,
yeah,
he's close to a world record.
This little point right here, if it didn't have it, interestingly enough, it would be right snugging up
right
against
up
the
there.
world record.
Depends on how much he dries and stuff because it takes 60 days before you can get him officially scored again.
You can find Craig Calderon's rack, well, what would be in the upcoming Pope and Young book. Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young are the same scoring system. His was the 6th largest buck ever taken with a bow and arrow, taken right here in Michigan. You can also find Craig Calderon #1 in this book, which is the Michigan Big Game Records put out by the organization Commemorative Bucks of Michigan, which has a county-by-county listing. Very handy. Now, Commemorative Bucks, we have Dan LaRose here, president,
Hi, Fred.
new president, and Ron Foss. Ron, welcome once again to Big Buck Night. You fellas have scored deer, pulled them out of the woodwork as far back as when,
76, I believe, is the oldest deer we have.
So if you folks have a rack out there that maybe you didn't even take, but you found one, you can have Commemorative Bucks score it. They have official scorers who go through some training and certification. You have a minimum, just like our Stroh's, a minimum of 10 point. Now, Stroh's would score this, by the way. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We count that because we could probably hang a tube on that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We'd add the outside spread and give a score. Super simple. But the Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young Commemorative Bucks isn't quite as simple, but you feel gives more prestige to the big, massive racks.
Right, we want to measure mass and symmetry, and we want to compare our Michigan bucks against any buck taken in the United States.
With that International Boone and Crockett
Right.
record book. Ron, how would you score, how would the official score a rack like this?
Okay, you take a steel cable, plastic or regular steel bite cable. We measure from the very tip of the burr at the corner of the eye. We go all the way to the very tip. We do this on both sides. We measure the length of all the beams.
Tines?
If this point right here by my finger is 1 inch long, it will be counted as a non-typical point. But then you add them all up, you subtract the non-typical little parts off of it, and it come out to what is final score, the very, what we call the bottom line. It'll come out to...
So if this is 6 inches and this is 5.5 inches, you're going to get a 1/2 inch subtracted.
Right. You lose the 1/2 inch.
Because of lack of symmetry.
Right.
What about the spread?
You use the inside spread counts, but the tip to tip does not count, or the outside spread does not count. But on our records, we put them down.
We write them down
know.
anyway.
Right. Everything is written down where you can look at that paper and anybody can tell you what it looks like.
Now this is Dan's rack that he keeps recounting. It's scored after the deductions 135. 36.
Right.
Okay, but you have to have 140 to make your
We
record.
raised our minimums from 125 to 140.
Boy, do I have good news for you. Your rack makes the Stroh's.
Yeah,
You get a Stroh's award. Let me step over here with Ron a second. You have a collection of bucks that, by the way, will be at our museum up at Houghton Lake for the month of December. And information about these bucks, but very quickly, we have a non-typical with some call these drop tines.
Drop tines.
And how do you measure that? Do you measure it from that distance?
We measure, yes, right? You measure just like if you're taking take a magic line, you just draw the magic line across here, you draw it right down the center of the beam, goes right down to the very tip, and you mark it off with a steel cable or a 1/4 inch steel tape, not a 1/2 inch tape. It does not count.
So this is a
You measure-
non-typical?
Yes, this would be non-typical. And you also measure 4 circumferences. There's 4 circumferences you have to have.
This would be a high score with
Yes.
because of the mass.
And the mass on this one did really good. This one up.
A smaller buck wouldn't have the mass, but this made it because of the length of the
length
tines.
of the tines.
This, a couple bucks that were found with locked antlers.
Locked antlers. A farmer found these while he was out cutting the woods in his back 40, and he found them laying in the back of his 40.
I'll be darned. So that's an impressive display. This one is unusual in that it has 2 main beams.
Yeah, a Boone and Crockett nightmare.
I guess so, but that would score as a non-typical. And
Non-typical.
This could go either way because you say it has these little tines that are or points that come off of the burr.
Right. If you add these all up, there's more than 12 5/8 inches of non-typical points, which puts it automatically into non-typical. To put it into typical, you must deduct all the length of all of these tines. Well, it came out to 196 something non-typical and 173 typical, so I put it back in as a typical.
You know, this does for hunting. You guys have done from hunting what the athletes do in sports with your statistics, mathematics, and computers. And they have all of this, by the way. You have 4 issues a year of Buck Facts magazine, which explains your scoring system, lists your scores. This, what, $10 a year?
$10 a
to
year.
belong to the commemorative bucks. A good organization, and you guys have done so much for hunters with a scoring system that's a little more complicated than ours, but the hunters are learning about it.
Yes.
Now, Ron Foss, what is the #1 most symmetrical rack in your estimation, most beautiful of all times?
Mark Ritchie's.
Mark Ritchie's rack, 1985, held the state record for 1 year. Let's take a look at it. It looks like a big rack, but Mark, it doesn't, I mean, do people say this is the biggest one? Because it doesn't have all the points and gnarls and...
No, not many people tell me it's the biggest one, and I know it's not, but it's definitely pretty symmetrical and pretty rack.
Well, that's the thing. That's why this goes in the top of the Boone and Crockett record book in Michigan. This is the top tier. It's just about perfect. It has a little tine there, comes out, which you would get a deduction for on the Boone and Crockett. But that's just about perfect symmetry. What does it score?
186 and 1/8.
186 and 1/8. That's the score to beat for you trophy hunters who want to get a big one. Did you know when you saw this deer that it would measure out as big as it did? Or did you think there's just a 10-point?
No, I kind of did because a friend of mine told me that he thought it would measure 190 before deductions.
Yeah.
And when it was measured, it was right. It was right on the
Right
money.
on
what he told me.
190?
Yeah.
It's difficult to get any more points than Mark Ritchie's racked. It was so perfect on symmetry, and Boone and Crockett rewards the symmetry. But we have a system here. Jim Hebert, welcome to Big Buck Night, once again representing Safari Club International. Now, the Safari Club system is one that doesn't really recognize the symmetry of a rack, does it?
You're right. You're right, we don't. If we can look at this as an example, Fred, in this case, this animal has this tine that is probably 2.5, 3 inches longer than that one.
The corresponding tine on the opposite beam.
Correct. Safari Club doesn't minus that. In other words, it gives the animal credit for everything it really has.
So the fact that tines are uneven, what if there's 4 tines on one side, 6 on the other?
Matters not. It could be 6 on one side and 1 on the other. There's no deductions.
What if it has
that.
a perfect 30-inch spread?
That doesn't matter because we don't measure this beauty measurement. We call it space.
Well, what does Safari Club measure?
Well, we measure each tine, the beam, the base at the burr, the total of points.
Around the base?
Correct.
At the burr? Total those up, and that's the score.
Very simple.
Simple Safari Club system. Of course, Safari Club is an organization that's been in existence for, what? Since
12, 13 years now.
And it has how many members worldwide?
We have over 1 million members and affiliate members around the world.
And it's an organization that has a lot of affluent sportsmen that travel the world. You put out a trophy book, record book of trophy animals that is incredible. I don't know how much it weighs.
It's heavy.
10 pounds or something like that. But it has animals from all over the world, a bow division, handgun, rifle, listings of Safari Club members. You have to be a member to get in this book.
Right.
And I know that costs more than the average subscription to a newsletter. The initiation fee is...
Well, yes, it's you get more than just a newsletter. We publish a biannual or a bi-monthly
the Safari Club magazine, a slick magazine, articles on outfitters from around the world, hunting stories.
Right, as well as our newsletters and conventions, etc. And it ranges from $60 for membership for the archery division to $100 to be a member of a local chapter, of which we have, what, 5 in Michigan now.
5 in Michigan, and the chapters of Safari Club do have meetings, monthly meetings oftentimes.
The women are included. We love to have the wives involved. That's
but
important.
The one sort of stigma that Safari Club has had is that it's a rich hunters club.
Yeah.
Is that
We're
true?
perceived as that because of the name, I guess, Safari Club International. And it's not that way at all. I mean, the fellow who shoots an elephant at one time killed his first, rabbit. And that's where we start from. We start from the basics. Anybody, we'd love to have involved with our organization.
That's how you got 1 million members.
That's right.
Jim, a great organization,
Thanks,
Safari Club International, has the scoring system that does not deduct for symmetry. Now let's take a look at the rack that was the big newsmaker in 1984. This is John West we're talking to from Holland, the premier in the Spotlight Buck Hunter of the year. Undoubtedly, we will not have a rack bigger than this. 62.6 with 37 points. Where did you take it? You want to tell everybody the exact location?
Not really.
I don't blame you.
I took him in Allegan State Forest.
On state land?
Next to a cornfield.
Did you get out early?
Yeah, I got out about 2 hours before daylight.
2 hours and you sat there in your blind. Why? Is that the secret to success?
Well, I wanted to get back in there before he'd gotten bed down so I could get a crack at him.
How far away was he when you saw him?
About 10, 15 feet when I let him have it.
10 or 15? That must have just made you shake in your boots.
Not until after I walked up behind him.
Oh, after you'd shot him?
Yeah.
Man, you've been hunting for 10 years also. How many bucks?
I've gotten 5 of them.
We going to see you again here next year with another record buck?
I sure hope so.
Well, I hope so, too. This is John West. Take a look at this buck. The largest in the state this year that we found, 37 points by the Stroh scoring method, 25.6 is the spread outstanding. Now, in some respects, this rack isn't as interesting maybe as John West's non-typical, but this is a big bruiser. This is a 13-pointer, scores Boone and Crockett in the 160s, is donated to Michigan Outdoors. You'll be able to see this deer up at our museum at Houghton Lake. It was donated by Glenn Williams. Glenn, welcome to Big Buck Night. President of the newly formed Michigan Big Game Hunters Association. You have T-shirts, you have hats, you have membership. What's the Big Game Hunters Association all about?
Well, we were formed for betterment of big game hunting in the state of Michigan, which includes deer, bear, elk, and turkey hunting.
Mm-hmm. You have how many members now?
Oh, a little over 900.
And this represents, you started about 2 years ago, wasn't it?
It'll be 2 years, about January 10th.
And the membership fee?
$15.
$15, and you have a membership kit, which you get a patch, decal, bumper sticker, newsletter, which comes out how often?
Quarterly.
Quarterly newsletter. And I happen to know you have a big magazine at the printer.
It'll be a major magazine. It'll be on the bookshelves probably first part of January. Dave Ritchie, who's the outdoor editor of the Detroit News, the editor of the magazine, so it'll be a major magazine.
Great. Well, you're the youngest organization. You do have minimums that are a little lower than commemorative bucks and Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young, so fellas can get and gals can get their name in your record book.
That's true.
Record book. Glenn, thanks for telling us about the Big Game Hunters Association and this rack, which will be up at the museum, and talk about racks. We have some monsters coming your way in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. Big Buck 7 will continue. This limited edition print, Midnight Vigil by Dave Bowman, available to you. PBS print is what this is, a PBS special edition we're doing. We're going to print as many as we need to accommodate all of the people who call in a $120 pledge. Then the edition will be cut off. The rest of them are going to be torn up. This print was done by Dave Bowman, St. Clair Shores artist. Here's Dave right here in the studio with the deer head that you say, Dave, inspired that print?
Yeah, Fred. Pretty much the ideas came from a combination of things, but the head I used for finished detail in that after I completed the painting, I would sit down and look at all the fine hairs and this type of thing, the texture of the fur, and that's how I came up with the detail on it.
A magnificent print, by the way, which includes the moonlight. It's why it's called a Midnight Vigil buck, and a phenomenal print. It's on the cover of our Outdoor Digest magazine. For those folks lucky enough to get a big buck, everybody wants to have him mounted, Brad. Hang him over the fireplace. Brad Bruce, of course, from the Michigan Taxidermist Association, president of the association, successful taxidermist in Tecumseh. You mount lots of deer heads, and you have for years.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking with envy upon this deer head I'm holding?
It's got some problems, Fred.
It does have some problems. This is when before I retired from taxidermy, I did this 22 years ago, mounted this deer. If you take a close look at it, it has a few problems. The mouth, I see that's pulling apart here and is cracked up at the eyes. This cracked all around the eyes. The antlers, I don't know what happened here. I know I bolted them down 22 years ago, and the back is split apart, right back, down between the ears. This deer is a mess, Brad.
Pretty rough shape, Fred.
Pretty rough shape. I know a lot of people have deer in their cabins or their place of business that end up looking like this after a number of years. What should I have done?
Well, some simple maintenance on a periodic basis throughout the year, and it really doesn't have to be several times. Just a few times a year with the brush attachment, vacuum cleaner, with the grain of the hair.
You might be surprised to know that this deer has never been vacuumed.
Oh, well, they should be.
I've blown off the dust a few times, but that's about it.
It's a step in the right direction. But,
what about the hair that gets going the wrong way?
Well, you can get in there and brush them. Sometimes a little bit of dampness on it, a little water will help out, and even pet them into place works quite effectively. It should deer hair should never be combed against the grain. It's hollow.
Well, it's hollow, and it'll break
right,
off as well.
Exactly. A little maintenance work around the eyes in the form of a damp Q-tip. You can clean the dust off of the eyes. Works real well.
That's right. These eyes are very dull because they're covered with dust.
Exactly, and it will freshen the mount up, give it a little bit better look when the eyes are clean.
So just use a Q-tip for that?
Sure, a Q-tip works fine, and we also use an old toothbrush that you can tune up the fine hairs around the eyes and what have you, or work on the eyebrows.
What about the Vaseline? What do you use that for?
Vaseline, mineral oil, or glycerin works real well to just a little dab on your finger around on the nose pad, around the back of the eyes, the front of the eyes, and the preorbital gland area, which is very vulnerable, thin skin.
That's where this one cracked.
Right, exactly.
After those years.
Well, it loses with the dryness, especially the fireplace, the dry heat, the elasticity in the skin, and so something's got to go. But the oil will keep them.
That's a big no-no. Don't hang them over a fireplace. They dry out.
Really, it's not a good place to put them.
Keep them away from the heat.
Or don't
and
burn
the
the fireplace, one or the other. But the dry heat is really rough on them.
Now you have some paper toweling here.
Paper towel, we use just dampened paper towel. You can wipe the antlers down. Another thing that we use is a neat little trick with a piece of nylon stocking. You can shine the eyes. It works extremely well in addition to the Q-tip and a little Windex. You can also shine on the horn, buff them up a little bit. It brings the natural oils back out on them. I don't know if
well, you can see the difference right there. That nylon stocking just buffs those antlers.
And it will also do the same thing on the hair. If you just wipe them down, it puts a little bit of a shine back on them, and they look good for years to come.
We're going to have you come up to the museum one of these Saturdays and do a seminar. There's probably an awful lot more to keep
them. Oh, there's
mounts.
A lot of things that you can do with them to renovate them and bring them back if they have gotten away.
I'd like to see what you could do with this.
Well, there's some work involved there, but I think it could be done.
But I tell you, if for folks that have maybe smaller racks that don't want to go to the expense and trouble and have the space of storing a full mount, there's a neat way that you've done for me on storing or presenting a smaller rack. I think this is a great way to display a rack. Just a little leather. Brad, you do a magnificent job on this.
Thank you.
And a buck that I think was well worthy of a display of this nature. My 1987 buck, a mere 2-point, but one that I'm very happy with. Now, Bob Garner has a year, Brad, here that he's going to brag it up on.
Well, this is my second day buck. In fact, Brad's going to put the leather on that one, too. We'll call that a 4-point. No,
that's a 4-point. Yeah, that'll hold the ring right there.
No gripes with that system. Okay. And this is my 6-point I took opening day.
Now, there's a point in contention here, Brad Bruce. Now, you're our official scorer. When I put the ring on that, not even Bob Garner.
No, we can't give you that.
We can't give you that one, Bob. It's a 5-pointer.
I thought the system was with an asterisk. If it's less than 8, you can take the little knobby ones.
No, our system is getting tougher every year.
Next year, huh?
Next year, that's right. But I tell you, this year we have the biggest bucks of all time on Big Buck Night. Let's take no more time, get into the interviews, and look at these racks.
Nick Converse took this buck that had an 11 3/8-inch tine in Livingston County.
Well, my wife seen him right behind the house in the swale. She called me at work, and he laid there all day, and I got home, and I seen him there. And he was still there, and I called my brother out, and we tried rattling him out in the fence row across the way. And then there was another buck in there and another doe, and they were fighting over that doe. And then he tried to rattle him out, and he still wouldn't come out, so I just snuck back around to the house and got down behind my house and started going across the yard, and then took about a 35-yard shot.
Oh, with your bow yet?
Yeah.
That's incredible. This thing was sitting in that swale with its antlers probably glistening all day long?
Oh, yeah, you could see it. When I walked down the road to go to the fence row, we just walked down there. You could see him. He watched us walk right down there.
Why didn't you tell your boss you were feeling a little queasy and you had to get home early?
Well, I didn't know what he looked like, you know.
Boy.
I would have ran right out if I would have known he was this big.
Boy, I guess
Darryl Coffey's Shiawassee buck had a wide rack and an 11 1/2-inch tine.
This deer's been around. I've seen him for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
Is that right?
And my son saw him this fall bow hunting. And he went back to the same place where he saw him bow hunting, and he came out and came across, but he was too far away for him to shoot. And he came out and went over the top of the hayfield, and my wife saw him, and she watched him through binoculars go clear across the field. And then he came in. I have a farm pond, and he came in behind the pond, and I was sitting in the blind there, and he came up to me.
Oh. Your wife was where? Was she hunting?
She's in the house.
Oh, and I was just watching the whole thing.
A big buck with a handgun, Tom Seabright of Martin, took this one in Allegan County.
It just happened to run right up in front of me.
In front of you? Now, you had your handgun.
Yeah.
Did you stand up? Did you put the gun out? Did you rest it against something?
I was kind of sitting back on a couple rocks. I just held it right out in front of me and shot at it.
Weren't you a little bit nervous? Didn't that gun dance a little bit?
Oh, it happened so quick. When they just come running up like that, it doesn't seem to make us as nervous as when they fiddle around and come walking up real slow and whatnot.
Yes. Well, you made a dead-eye shot with your handgun. Congratulations. A super rack. That's the biggest handgun deer that we've seen so far this year.
Donna Shankleton of Chelsea says the swamp is the place to be for the big bucks.
Do you pick your own spot, or does your husband say, here's a place for you, honey?
We've tried that for a couple of years, and so this spot I picked myself.
All right.
He usually gets the trophy bucks, but he tells me I'm in the good spot, so.
Oh, I see. This time you didn't go for this good spot stuff.
Right.
And
I picked
your
my own spot. We did some scouting, and I found this funnel, and I decided that'd be a good spot to set opening day. So.
Where were you sitting in this little funnel? Did you make a little blind, or?
Yeah, a little blind, put my back up against the tree, and in front of me would be about a 40-yard span, and that's where this guy came. He was going from one swamp to another.
Needless to say, you're going to pick your own spot next year, or you're going to hunt in that same spot?
I'm going to hunt in the same spot.
Same spot. You have your claim on it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great, Donna. That is a super rack. Congratulations. This is number 5 in?
Yes.
Number 5. Super.
$5 in 5 years for Donna. Lucky, too, was Dorothy Jury of Alpena due to her husband's misfortune.
Well, I heard him shoot, and I thought he got his buck. And so I sat there looking out of the front of my blind, and I waited. And then all of a sudden I seen something move on the side of my blind. And I turned and looked, and I said, oh, no. And my gun was over on the other side. And so I had to reach for that and turn, and he started moving, and he was in the woods. And I shot once, and that was it.
That was it?
Right.
And this is the same deer your husband shot at?
Right.
Have you given him any instruction on shooting?
No.
You haven't?
No.
I guess you wouldn't want to. Now let him do this year after year.
Walter Obrinsky of Olivet took this 10-point that had gotten a battle with an electric fence and won it in Calhoun County.
Mm-hmm. And you say you watched this deer from this little blowdown for 2 hours.
Yep.
And how far away was he?
100 yards.
Well, that's long enough for a shot, isn't it?
Well, between all the briars and the blowdowns, I didn't figure I wanted to chance it. You know, it goes through your mind, you want to stalk him and you want to shoot and lob one in or something, you know. I figured, what the hell, I'll just...
just wait
it
it out.
out.
I'll be darned. That must have driven you crazy.
Well, the first 15 minutes, I was tucking my heart back down in my chest, you know, and after that, I guess I was all right.
Man, but you got it?
Yep.
One shot, lots of venison, and a nice rack for the wall. Terrific and a great
A
story.
buck with sideburns? Well, here's one produced in Midland County and taken by Don Lashaway.
But until I got up to it, I didn't know it had horns like that.
That must have surprised you to see that.
Oh, it sure did.
Now this is one that I suppose would score out maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I suppose you'd, I don't know. What do you score this, Brad? Did you count the, try to hang?
10 points and a 13-inch spread.
10 points with a what'd you do, measure from there to there? 13 inches across?
I went just the other way, but
13 inches across from there to there. That's unusual. What would
This odd rack was taken in Oakland County by Ken McMillan of Novi.
Possibility of a shot.
Would you have rather had this buck with a typical rack, or do you like it better this way?
I think I'd have probably rather had him typical,
Really?
but, you know, it's just kind of strange. You really don't see too many looking like that.
You
know,
sure
so-
don't.
Tony Griggs of Horton got this star-shaped rack in Jackson County.
So what is it about the swamps you like? You've had good luck hunting this edge?
Well,